We've now moved to the couch and it is time for Newsnight, and tonight we discuss South Sudan, or the South Sudan crisis. We are aware that yesterday, and as if we've just reported here also on NTV Tonight, that the South Sudanese leaders, or the warring leaders, did yesterday sign a cessation of hostilities agreement. And in that agreement, they were set a 45-day deadline to sign or to put together a unity government. We did mention in our story today that there will be a government with the president as Salva Kiir, who will also be the commander-in-chief of the South Sudanese army, but also there will be a vice president and prime minister. To discuss this with me and what else lies in this agreement, or what's the way forward for South Sudan, is Andrew Wenda on Newsnight. Andrew Wenda, the old man of the clan, and also the CEO of the Independent magazine. Andrew, welcome.
You say the old man of the clan as if it's something you don't believe, right?
Let's discuss the matter at hand, South Sudan crisis. And many do not know, actually, you're somehow involved in this.
No,
it would be nice to say that
there was just a coincidence that I was in Addis Ababa and the negotiations were taking place.
All right. It is interesting that we now have another
Cessation.
Cessation.
Addis Ababa is a very good place for tourism because it has very pretty women.
I've not been there, my wife has. Let's discuss the matter at hand. The latest cessation of hostilities agreement.
Will it hold?
Yes. And we only have 45 days.
First of all, I should tell you that during those negotiations, the condition was that there should be an executive president and a prime minister who can appoint a cabinet. And the suggestion from Kenya, Uganda and Rwanda, I think with some reluctance from Ethiopia, was that the Salva Kiir remains president because he's elected, but Riek Machar should not be the prime minister or the vice president. They should find a prime minister agreeable to both Riek and Salva Kiir.
So what's in it?
Why?
Yes,
because there is a feeling that when Riek was vice president, he literally took over cabinet, he mobilized many cabinet ministers to be turned against President Salva Kiir, and that then he would use these ministers to shout down Salva Kiir each time he went to share cabinet, so that Salva Kiir actually at one time ran out of cabinet and stopped sharing cabinet. So if you give him an executive position as vice president or prime minister, he is likely to do the same thing again because he's impatient for power. This is what I could hear from the corridors of power as the opinion of the people of Salva Kiir, the people from Uganda and the Kenyans, and those are the people who are participating there, not so much the Ethiopians. Because remember that Ethiopia is favorable to Riek, but the members of the Northern Corridor, which is Uganda, Rwanda and Kenya, had been in negotiations with Salva Kiir on infrastructure projects and development, so they don't want to jeopardize the Northern Corridor plans because the person have been working with the Salva Kiir. So it is important to understand the feelings of these other member countries because they have powerful implications on this peace process. Now, the Salva Kiir people feel that, rather the people of Riek Machar, they feel that Riek Machar should actually be part and parcel of those negotiations because, let me tell you, I believe that Riek is an important factor in the establishment of a stable political order in South Sudan. And getting him out of an executive role and keeping him out may not be a good idea. So you have to find a formula through which he can either be the prime minister or the vice president, so that it is like Kibaki and Raila, or Mugabe and Chiang Rai.
But will this cessation of hostilities agreement hold? Because previously we had, they had signed another peace deal, but we saw fighting.
Yes, I also think that it will be difficult for it to hold, because remember that both sides suffer from what I would call mutually reinforcing fears and temptations. You see, if you are Riek Machar, you may feel that if you stop fighting now, you are giving a chance to Salva Kiir to immediately organize, bolster his military position, which has been weak and finally he may break it and defeat you.
Does he have any?
So
Other
because
than being boosted by the UPDF?
Iran actually has a force. Now, if you give a ceasefire for the next 5 years, he can build this for the next 2 years.
Yes.
Hold a second, he can train a strong arm and attack. So because of that fear, I told you, mutually reinforcing fears and temptations. If you're Riek Machar, you are tempted to attack him early before he becomes strong. And the same applies actually to Salva Kiir. Yes.
There's two issues quickly I want us to discuss, but let's begin with this. You have part of the argument, and initially the reason they didn't actually, put pen to paper was that they had in the agreement said 2 years, that both parties will be given a 2-year unity, power sharing, government
up to the elections.
Yes, up to the elections, and that none of the two would actually have to contest that election. That was disagreeable by both parties.
Well, let me tell you, in fact, the first proposal was the Riek people are saying, look, if you're going to have Salva Kiir, exclude Riek, then Salva Kiir must also be excluded. But then there was a counter argument. Salva Kiir is a directly elected president. How can you ask him to leave? This is the problem the American government is facing. The Obama administration is actually pro-Riek. They feel that Salva Kiir is less educated, doesn't understand things, and Riek has a PhD, is much more sophisticated and understands issues national and global. So the challenge then is, the Americans, if they support Riek against Salva Kiir, it would go against the very grain of the international foreign policy. The foreign policy which states that, you must respect the democratically elected president. This Salva Kiir is an elected president. You cannot easily eliminate him. Now, the second question is to ask both of them not to run. But these are the most important factor. And
that was disagreeable for both parties finally, because we have to end this. There is a concern, okay, not a concern, that now the South Sudanese or the Riek Machar group has finally agreed, or seems to have finally decided to approach President Yoweri Museveni to act as mediator, and not trusting the Ethiopians.
Let me tell you, in fact, I have even, like I can speak it from the horse's mouth, because I've talked to the president about it.
Yes.
He cannot be the mediator. You see, there is an IGAD process. And the president specifically told me, look, under the IGAD process, there is Prime Minister Haile Mariam of Ethiopia, who has been selected as mediator. I cannot therefore participate in any meeting with Riek Machar and his people, whatever it is, because I would be undermining the mediatorial role that my colleague is playing, which is officially given to him through the IGAD process.
But his team was here last week.
Yes.
And sought met the president, sought to meet the president, met Salim Saleh, General Salim Saleh, and actually was, and said, and spoken to both the NTV and I think the Daily Monitor, and said they would be open to a mediation by President Museveni. Well,
in other words, then President Museveni has to ask Haile Mariam and the IGAD process to allow him to get involved. You see, President Museveni is an important factor in the issues of South Sudan. So if I was Riek, I would try to establish some form of communication with him so that he can play a crucial role. The Ethiopians don't have troops on the ground. The Ethiopians seem to me to be slightly removed from the situation. Uganda is too deeply embedded into it. Of course, the problem that President Museveni faces is that he has his troops supporting one side. And the good thing is he has not argued issues of South Sudan. He has simply argued that Uganda went there in order to protect Uganda's national interests, which were at stake. So, which gives him theoretically a neutral position. But I should tell you, the Riek Machar people have an axe to grind with him.
All right, we will discuss that on another day. And that was Newsnight.